presentations by Alvin for the first 15 minutes. And then we also will have another 15 minutes from James. And after that, we will have our Q&A sessions. And I'll explain to you later on the instruction on how we can do that. But first, let me introduce you to Alvin Christian. Mr. Alvin is currently as the Managing Director of TMF Group of Indonesia. They are a business management consulting company that specializes in several business, including payroll, accounting, tax, and many others. He also currently as a treasurer of a board member of European Business Chamber of Commerce in Indonesia. So Alvin has combined overseas experience and local experience more than 20 years in the fields of strategic leadership, corporate finance, accounting, taxations, and he holds a Master of Science degree in Financial Economics from Boston University, also holds Certified Accountant, FCPA, CPA, and member of CPA Australia, and member of Ikatan Komite Audit Indonesia. So without further ado, we will hear the presentations from Alvin, and then over to you, Alvin.
Great, I'm unmuted now. Thank you so much, Grady, for the introduction. Thank you so much for the team, and thank you so much for all the participants to take the time to be with us this afternoon for quick overview about the investment in the Great Reshuffle we're in the midst of currently. Well, the Great Reshuffle, I think it's a term often discussed in HR field, discipline, community, what have you. But obviously, it's something that's also impacting a lot of aspects of the businesses beyond HR and beyond managing talents and so on. So great opportunity to be here. Hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. Maybe as a quick overview of before I start with a quick overview of where we are in terms of the economy, investment world, Indonesia in particular, be good to actually give a quick overview of TMF Group. I think Grady has alluded to briefly about what we do. We are a management consulting firm. We operate across the world in 85 countries. We are globally certified from an ISO and ISA perspectives. Also having a quite robust business continuity program. We do have about 9,000 experts on the ground in those 85 countries. We serve a large number of clients. About 15,000 of them are group clients, and we serve 2/3 of the Fortune Global 500 index companies, and also 2/3 of the FTSE 100 index companies out of London. In addition to that, we also help private equities, a large number of private equity groups, to manage their holdings and investments in in different sectors throughout the world. As you could tell there, 40% out of the top 300 private equity firms globally have been assisted by us. We serve in a few different disciplines, but mainly in corporate secretarial entity management, accounting and tax compliance, HR and payroll compliance, and capital market support in Indonesia. Again, these are just a quick map of the world and where we have our presence and our offices throughout the globe. Next slide, please. So that's a quick introduction of TMF Group. In terms of what we have in front of us right now is one of our flagship or our prominent report that we issue on an annual basis. It's called the Global Business Complexity Index, and where we rank the different countries and jurisdictions throughout the world, particularly those where we operate in, that 85 countries, and rank them based on a few different criteria, which are listed here, actually: accounting, tax, landscape in terms of the rules and regulations related to the law, right? And also the HR and payroll labor environment, right? So as you could tell here, we listed, tried to list the most complex jurisdictions and the most simple jurisdictions in each one of the regions globally. Indonesia, as an example, was previously ranked as one of the most complex jurisdictions globally for the obvious reasons: the complexity of the rules and regulations in country, the very much employee-centric labor regulations, right, and the fines and penalties that are quite quite punitive in country. That has changed with the introduction of omnibus, with the different efforts done by the government to address the regulation obesity, the perception, to address the perception of employee-centric labor law, and so on and so forth, right? As a result of the introduction of omnibus and the following subsequent implementation rules, the Indonesia's rank in the Global Business Complexity Index has improved from number 1, being the most complex jurisdiction in 2019 and 2020, into number 6. Still in the top 10, but has improved significantly if you were to compare year on year, right? So our expectation is for Indonesia to continue to improve and be outside of the top 10, or hopefully the top 20 most complex jurisdictions to operate, which obviously will bring about more investments into the country. So as you can tell in the top bracket or tables here of all the complex jurisdictions in the world, they are all emerging market, what we call emerging economies countries, right? EM countries, with the exception of maybe France. France continue to actually go up in terms of complexity, I think for a number of reasons. But just like Indonesia, France labor law is very much employee-centric. And with the pandemic, there was an introduction related to the COVID-19, which allow a furlough. Furlough is, well, I'm sure everyone knows what furlough means on this call, but furlough policy that is actually quite generous to the employees. So obviously adding the complexity and burdens to the employers to operate and carry, carry on to operate in France. Also, there are a slurry of regulation changes in terms of tax that I think politically are intended to address the shortfall of the economy before the election. There's an election coming up in 2022, I think April 2022 in France, and some of the changes or speculatively, at least from my end, probably intended to strengthen the position of the current government, right? That obviously wanted to say impose beyond that election. So that's a little bit about complexity. Maybe next slide. A quick outlook of the of the overall market. Try to address overall the more developed economies, maybe on the left side of the chart there, in terms of the in Asia as well as the world, right? You can see Singapore, China, US, Vietnam as one of the fastest growing countries in Asia and the overall world. You can see, that it's a simple, 4 bars type view that shows 18, 19, 20, 21 forecast, right? And you can see the recovery, right? All the green chart going up, showing, steady and encouraging recovery across the world, right? China in particular, although they never hit a negative GDP, even during the pandemic, given the size of the economy, I think they still ended up at a much lower growth in 2020 at 2.3%, but they have rebounded and targeting to end the year with amazing 8.4% of GDP growth. And then if you pick another one of the bigger economies, maybe US, they suffered from the pandemic, obviously, last year, contracting at negative 3.4%, and they're aiming to be at 6.2% GDP growth this year. Indonesia, the one in the red box there, was not immune to the pandemic, right? The contraction for Indonesia was -2 last year to the GDP. Not as bad as some of the other economies that were in the negatives here, but largely to do with Indonesia not part of the global value chain, as you probably already heard in some of the news and discussions. So it's good and bad, right? Good thing is we didn't experience the same contraction. Bad is that we're outside of the of the global value chain where we need to be in order to achieve and realize our potentials. So as a result, the recovery, although is quite encouraging, it's probably at a slower pace, right? Because some of those things, the contractions that took place throughout the world, is the hiccup or the hiccup to the overall global value chain. Now the global value chain is back, so everyone is recovering fast, following, the value chain recovery, and Indonesia is kind of, trailing a bit behind, given that we're not fully part of that yet, right? But still an encouraging picture, and something that we need to keep an eye on and look forward to for it to improve further. As noted here, there are also complicating factors beyond COVID that have risen in the last 18 months, which we will cover some of it in the next slide. And on the right side here, again, is just showing sort of the emerging market and how they perform, and and how some of the countries are. Particularly if you look at this on the right chart, here's on the 2021 forecast and 2022 forecast, anticipating, a big jump, just that pink chart, so pink bars, you can see that a big jump in the economy or in the GDP in 2022 across the board. China, and then even Indonesia, if you look at that. So quite encouraging, forecast from Fitch and Bloomberg here in this case. So next slide, please. So as mentioned earlier, some of the economies are recovering faster than others, and some of them, although recovering fast, still exposed to some of the risks. For the emerging markets in particular, I think one of the risks that we need to be watchful and mindful of is the fact that we are, or the emerging markets, which Indonesia is part of, there's a huge reliance on China for growth, and demand from China that obviously impacting the countries in the emerging market that supply or have trade relationship with China, right? So what's been happening in China, I'm sure you follow the news, you heard about some of the crisis in the property sector within China, in addition to the continuing tension between China and the US, started off during the time with Trump, but continuing on with the time under Biden's administration, and obviously something that we need to be cautious of. So given the size of the economy of China, anything happen in China, US, India, obviously would have a large impact to the rest of the world, right? So that's sort of the takeaway from this slide. Next slide, please. So this slide is a bit busy, but the idea of this slide is to simply highlight that the emerging markets, these are all the countries which are considered the emerging market countries, are doing much better in the last crisis, the 2013 crisis. And Indonesia in particular, Indonesia is fourth on the list there on both the left and the right chart. You can see that Indonesia, while still impacted by the taper tantrum or the global macro economy dynamic, you can see that it's a lot more resilience when compared to 2013 and when compared to its peers in the emerging market countries. The easy way to look at that is just look at Indonesia line, the row for Indonesia, and look at the row for group average at the bottom. You can see, without looking at even the percentages, just look at the indicators, which is red, amber, and green. Indonesia is trending, better across the board from the perspective of bond yield percentages, foreign ownership, import cover, fiscal balance, government debt, and current accounts. Indonesia across the board is doing much better, either the same or much better than the group average, which is obviously indicating resilience that we have as a country and as an economy. Next slide, please. So speaking a bit further about Indonesia in terms of the GDP growth by sector, you can see some of the sectors that are enjoying or experiencing a strong recovery from last year. Some of the top sectors growing the most or growing the fastest this year. On the flip side, you could see they were also suffering, right? And really experiencing the worst of all the sectors in 2020 for the same period, which is Q2 2020 versus Q2 2021. Some of this are obviously due to the great effort and resilience of the people of Indonesia, but in addition to that, also supported by great effort by the government through the National Economic Recovery Program that have injected a tremendous amount of capital into the economy and securing and ensuring that a lot of the sectors, actually throughout all the sectors, but particularly these top 5 sectors to be protected, given that they represent a big part of the economy and a big part of the population, obviously the workforce. On the inflation front for Indonesia, we're not at the level where we were in 2019. We ended 2019, if you look at that, is at the 2.7, somewhere around that in terms of inflation. We're at about 1.6, 1.7 right now. So recovering, but not at the level that we like or need to be in order to maintain or sustain a stable growth. But heading in the right direction for sure. So should feel encouraged by that. Another view that's quite simple, but also something that we should feel good about is the investment realization in country from both foreign and domestic source. You can see a huge improvement of particularly of the investments coming outside the country into Indonesia. If you look at 2012, just a few years back, right, 2012, you could see that foreign direct investment of FDI is a small part of the overall picture, not more than 25%, if that, of the overall investment realization in country. And now in 2021, or even if you look back to 2020, year 2020, in the midst of COVID, you see a more balanced 50-50 investments in terms of foreign direct investors and domestic investors. Next slide, please. So again, related to the market outlook and investment in the next year and in near term, I think that some areas we need to watch out for, right? Obviously, the top of the list is the COVID variant, right? I think we've all heard and seen and read, and maybe some of us exposed and experienced the Delta variant, which obviously was more or is more aggressive than the previous strain. And there could be more variant to come, which obviously will pose a big risk, not only to Indonesia but globally, right? Secondary here highlighted is the Chinese slowdown, as I mentioned earlier. Rising stress in the property markets, and that will have ripple effect to the rest of the economy and the rest of the sectors in China, which then will have ripple effect to the emerging markets, including Indonesia. And I think some of the other risks there that are rated as medium to low, which can have a moderate or high impact to the overall economy. Next slide, please. So the key takeaways that I want to highlight here, I'm sure the presentation material will be available so everyone can read through and get a bit more familiar with some of the materials shared just now. But the key takeaways for businesses, particularly from our perspective, of course, but particularly for Indonesia, is one, Indonesia is very much a highly attractive market. Steadily top 20 highest return for long-term investors among major global exchanges in the world. Tax-friendly jurisdiction with government's effort to continue to invite foreign investors into Indonesia with the plan to lower corporate income tax rate from 22% that we have currently. Before it was 25%, now it's 22%. I think that it would continue to come down. I think it had been scheduled for it to come down to 20% next year, but given I don't know, some of the latest developments from the Ministry of Finance, it sounded like that's going to be delayed a bit.
I think we have some kind of a technical issue. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I think we had some kind of technical issue, but you're back now, Alvin. Please continue.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry. I don't know where I left off, but I'll probably just continue on. Yeah. Okay. In terms of the size of the economy, and what that means for investors, there's large room for growing domestic investors and equity issuers, and anticipated to be in the top 5 GDP to replace Japan by 2030, right? Which is not that far off, right? We're about 9 years away. And I think the idea is for us to stay there in the top 5 and even doing much better by 2045, which is the 100-year anniversary of Indonesian independence, and to continue to go even stronger, right? Once you get to the top 3, then you need to also of GDP, then you need to take into account the size of the population also, right? And so it would be it would be a tremendous challenge, or it'd be tough for us to beat the top 3 of GDP globally, because they're also, you know, the top three biggest countries in the world, right? With the exception of US, but I mean, I like us to be ambitious, but you know, I think that would take a little bit more time for us to be able to surpass or eclipse US as the number 3 GDP globally. Okay, so I think the last bit there is just you know, that with the introduction of omnibus, it has reduced complexity in country tremendously, and you know, and hopefully with some of the implementation rules churning out it seems like every month or every other month, then you know, we continue to the government and the private sectors continue to work together to improve upon the ecosystem and business environment in country. So that's great for Indonesia. On a global front, you know, with everything happening right now, the crisis in China, some of the elections taking place in quite a number of emerging market countries coming up in 2022, we need to be cautiously optimistic of the outlook. So that's the end of my presentation. So back to you, Grady.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Alvin. That's very, very valuable information, not only locally, but we're talking about globally, right? And we can see how market trends, you know, some of the investment highlights, and I'm sure all of our participants wants to interact more with you in our Q&A sessions. We welcome everybody to put your questions on the chat bar, but later on in the Q&A sessions, we will also invite you to, if you want to speak directly and then, you know, ask the questions directly to our speakers, we can do that. But now let's move to our next presenter, Mr. James Palin from Monroe Consulting Group. But let me first introduce you to Mr. James Palin. Mr. James is currently the Managing Director of Monroe Consulting Group, Indonesia. This is the executive recruitment consultant company, specializes in placement services, outplacement, talent mapping, you know, RPO, right? And then we're specialized in several industry sectors, including consumer goods, technology, industrial, and then professional services and health. So Mr. James has over 15 years recruitment industry in APAC region, including Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, and currently in Indonesia. So without further ado, let's just hear from Mr. James. Over to you, James.
Thank you, Grady. Thank you for the introduction. So yeah, you've already introduced a little bit about myself and where I'm at. So as you can see here, Monroe is actually owned by Empresaria, which a lot of people are not aware of. So we've actually got 6 different recruitment brands across Asia and covering 10 different countries. So anything from contingency, retain search, contract, payroll, outplacement. Really a lot of new services have developed quickly in the last year and a half since COVID, and the market has really adapted very, very quickly. So we'll talk a little bit more about why that has happened, how that affects how you can hire, and we'll go on to talk about some of the do's and don'ts of what you should be doing as an employer when you're looking to bring in talent and to win the talent war that's currently happening in Indonesia. And we'll look at some of the things that the employees are now looking for. The market has certainly changed in terms of what people are looking for from a business now and how they interact with that business. And then we'll wrap things up with a look at what we've done at Monroe and hopefully open things up for questions from you guys as well. So if you could take me to the next slide, please. So what I want to start with is a bit of a, take us back, first of all, to March of last year when jobs really started to fall off. I think there's a small typo there, that should be 2020, but jobs fell hugely for Indonesia, and Monroe as one of the biggest recruitment businesses here saw jobs fall 65%, which was huge. And a big reason for that was technology based and panic based. What we found is that a big portion of Indonesia was not cloud-based. And so companies had to move employees to work from home. This caused panic. No one knew exactly what was happening. And the employment market really got hit. Unemployment was rising rapidly, and we quickly started to go into a recession in Indonesia, which it looks like we're now starting to work our way out of. But what happened quickly there was that we found new ways to engage with clients, and clients were looking for new ways to be able to hire employees. And you heard Alvin talk about the Omnibus Law, and certainly that had a massive impact on how people could employ. And that's really, really important when you look at contract employment, when you look at permanent employment, the different types of businesses that are going to get attracted to Indonesia, certainly in the tech space, are looking to hire not just hundreds of people, but thousands of people. And being able to do that on shorter term contracts is a massive difference. And that lack of ability to do that has been driving candidates to Vietnam, to Malaysia, to the Philippines, and anywhere but Indonesia. And this new law has really turned that around. So that new platform has really started to increase the competitiveness in this country. So you're seeing a lot of new recruitment companies coming here, and that's only a good thing for everybody. There's more choice, there's more competition, and when it comes to looking at how companies adapt, well, competition is a big catalyst for that. When you look at the types of companies that have been attracted here, well, when you look at cloud adoption, when you look at data centers, Google, you've got Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, all building data centers here now. You've got a lot of companies that are now looking at Indonesia with the population that we have here and thinking about how good of an option it now is. And that's fantastic. And this kind of investment, this kind of growth has really helped to start bring Indonesia out from this recession. So the economy has grown the fastest in more than a decade during the second quarter of this year. And that's fantastic. Employment rates are starting to increase across the board. And it's just a much more appealing country now for people to come to. And with this talent war that's happening, and it certainly has been building for a while in Indonesia, when you look at the likes of Gojek, Tokopedia, GoTo now, Bukalapak, there's a number of unicorns and now decacorns in this country, and that they're really driving this what now is becoming a talent shortage. And if you look at the kind of 140 to 150 million people just in the digital space alone that need to be hired over the next 9 years to fill all of those positions, at our current rate, we're going to fall somewhere in the region of 9 million people short. So how do companies generate, how do we generate training? How do we attract people to Indonesia? How do we attract people to our companies? Well, we're going to touch on the main reasons today. So I just wanted to take you through a bit of a timeline of where we were to where we're going. So if you could take me to the next slide, please. So how, as a business, do you start to position your brand as an attractive brand for people to want to join? Well, there are various different ways. We'll keep it simple. It's a very big discussion, but first and foremost, how does the market see your brand? How do people see your brand? And that's something that, from your mission statements to your marketing and advertising to how they first engage with you, whether that's directly or through a recruitment business, first impressions are very, very important. So there's a lot of things that can be done when it comes to building brand image. Mapping your markets, too, very, very simple, but using the tools at hand. So that can be Google, that can be LinkedIn, that can be recruitment agencies, that can be your internal TA teams. What are your competitors doing, and what kind of talent is out there which you're going to be targeting? So looking at your key positions, your key hires, where are you going to find them, and then being able to analyze your competitors and really start to understand what they do well, what they don't do well, and how you can attract them over. Whether you're a talent acquisition person, HR person, an MD, CEO, hiring manager, you're in sales, whether you like it or not. And you've got to be able to sell your business yourself and your roles to be able to get the best talent to your business. That's really part one. Part two that we'll talk about later is how you keep them, how you retain them, how you build culture. Talent communities are something that's very, very new to Indonesia. I think if you look at big brands like Tesla, Danone, Unilever, big global brands utilize talent communities very, very effectively. You know, these are app-based communities that can be self-sufficient, self-growing, something that's outside of your own database, outside of LinkedIn, that can be directly linked to all of the candidates out there. So people that are not with your business now, how do you update them on new jobs that you've got, new things your businesses are doing? How do you get people, refer people to your business and be able to reward them for referring great people to you? You know, how do you move away from relying solely on talent acquisition or recruitment businesses? Well, talent communities are a great way to do that. Choosing the best recruitment services for you. This really depends on anything from contingency recruitment hiring, which is, you know, generally for small amounts of hiring at a mid to senior level, or are you looking to hire a lot of people, in which case you're looking to do RPO type projects. If they are short-term projects, maybe you're looking to hire them on a contract. If they are very senior level people and just a few of them, you're probably better to use retained services. But understanding the options that are available to you and how best to utilize those are very, very important. Creating the right interview process. You know, once you get the right talent, they can easily be put off by processes that are too short, too long, too complicated. It really is that idea of first impressions and then the sales start. You know, how do I get these people interested in my business? And how do I get them to join my business over competitors who have similar products, similar services, similar solutions? Well, it's a tricky one, but it's something that working with your internal teams, working with your HR and with recruitment agencies, you can really start to strategize on that. Looking at the new trends that candidates are looking for in employees. Well, there are 5 top trends at the moment, which we'll touch on, which have really come to the forefront. That used to be purely money and career development. Now it's much more savvy when it comes to, you know, what people are looking for, and clear policies around flexibility and how people will engage and work for your company. Work from home, work from office are becoming more and more important and are one of the main 5 that we'll touch on. But really, when you position your brand now, it's one of the first things you need to talk about with the people that you're looking to hire. Next slide, please. So those are some of the do's. Now let's look at some of the don'ts when it comes to when you're looking to position your brand. So going with the cheapest options. Well, you know, we all know that the cheapest isn't always the best, and it's very true. I think when you look at what you want to achieve and the timelines in what you want to achieve it, being able to look at the different options that are available to you and being able to choose the one that ensures delivery will save you money in the long run. Not being able to hire the best talent or going with the cheaper options and hiring, you know, not such good talent, or trying to do it cheaply whereby you cannot engage with the top people directly, are only going to have negative impacts on your business in the long term. Trying to use too many agencies. Very, very common that people think that if they engage with numerous agencies, that they are going to find more people. That's not true. And certainly for a lot of the kind of mid to senior level roles, the talent pools are very, very small. What happens there is that the same people are getting approached by numerous agencies. The role no longer feels exclusive. Your brand image is damaged. It can get tainted by, you know, low-end recruiters who are not selling the right image, don't know you very well, don't know your brand very well. And what happens is suddenly people view your brand poorly. And through going for that approach, you miss being able to hire the top talent, and it does damage your brand in the market. Again, recruitment agencies and your TA teams are really your first point of contact and the first chance for your business to get sold to the top people. You've got to use that opportunity. So we touched on this before, but making the processes too quick or too easy to achieve, that's really an acute psychological trick that, if something's too easy or too cheap, we often think, what's the problem here? And people need to earn things. Interview processes need to be the same. And they need to really be able to wean out the people who aren't right for your business, the people who are really interested, and the people that fit your culture. And so there's got to be enough steps in the process to get that information, but not too many that you lose them to your competition. And relying solely on one form of recruitment or one form of hiring, whether it's your own TA teams or talent communities, agencies, you've got to have a diverse approach to hiring these days. If you think about fishing, you want to be using a big net. You want to be getting it out there as wide as possible and be making sure that you touch as much talent as possible out there with the right message. And whether you're able to hire them now or in the future, the right message will get them engaged in one way or another. So those are some of the do's and don'ts. But if you could just move to the next slide, please. We will start to look at, not just how to get them on board, but once you've got them there, how do you retain them? And that's really another big problem, because we have seen retention rates drop. We have seen people leaving during probation periods much more now, for one reason or another. And we are seeing people, we are seeing a lot of new jobs opening up. And a lot of reasons for that are that we can no longer hire external talent from overseas. We have to look internally now because the borders are closed. So all of the talent is coming from Indonesia. And with more jobs available and small talent pools at the top end, they've got a lot more choice. And if they come on board and things aren't right and they get a better offer during that 3 months, we've seen it quickly. So what can you do? Well, you've got to be very clear with what your company policies are during the Great Reshuffle, during the new normal. Many words for it now, many expressions for it, but you must be very, very clear. The candidate and employee experience from when they come on board with you to all the way through to offboarding is really important. So utilizing the best software for your company to be able to do that, and using gamification is a really good one that companies have been looking at. So gamification it is exactly what it sounds like. How do people level up within your business? How do they get rewarded? How do they get bonuses? How do you track their progress? Well, much like a game, keeping people engaged is very, very important. So how can you do that as a business is something you need to be very clear on. Defining probation targets. One of the biggest questions we get lately as a recruitment business is, well, it's COVID. What if I join this business and then I get fired? I've got a family. The clear answer there is, well, you need to talk to the business and we'll work with you to make sure that we can get that defined for you so that you can see what you need to do, how clear it is, what the percentage chance on average is that you're going to pass probation. And so you have a very clear understanding of what needs to be achieved and how you can achieve that with your hiring manager. Very, very important. Work schedules. So this is the biggest one, and certainly work flexibility. When do they need to be in the office? For how long? At what level do they have full flexibility? At what levels do you need them in the office more? Certainly this plays a bigger impact in Indonesia than a lot of other countries, and specifically in Jakarta because of traffic. We know how bad it is. We all hate being stuck in traffic, and so do all of our employees. So we've got to be very, very clear on how we define that. Shorter gaps between promotions. Again, they're really, really important. It's part of that gamification process. But if it's too hard to move up, then they're going to move out. So, keeping those gaps shorter, keeping the targets very clear, and getting them on that journey to the more senior levels can be a very engaging one. Gamification, shorter gaps between promotions are a great way to do that. Mentoring programs as you move up the food chain, certainly senior employees, managers often miss out on good training because you assume that they already know what they're doing. Well, we all need training, we all need mentoring, we all need improvements, and we don't always want to talk to our managers about this. Engaging the right businesses where you can have mentors that you can speak to, you can engage with, and you can learn from with regards to your progress as an employee and as a human being. are very, very important. And a lot of companies don't utilize that. It can be a very cost-effective way to retain your top management. When to pay bonuses, I think this is a very important one in countries where we have religious holidays, where you get big bonuses at certain times of the year, because they often coincide with mass exodus of candidates from your business, because they get their bonus and then they resign. And how do you reduce that? Well, the gamification, the shorter gaps, spreading out bonuses. There's different ways to do that, but it's very, very important that you do think about that. And if there's no way for you to change it as a business, that you make sure that your recruitment cycles and your talent mapping and your pipelining really revolve around your bonus cycles, because it is one of the key times that people will leave your business. Family days, open days, and company trips. Company trips, it's a tough one now, but certainly when the world reopens, hopefully, then that will happen. But getting involved in online, non-work-based activities, fun, just getting the employees engaged, doing different types of activities, different ways to keep them happy, have engagement that is non-work related, really helps to open up your business and let them see you and your brand as a very, very positive one for them and their family. It's very, very important. You've got to make your house your home. And there's a big difference between the two, and a lot of companies miss out on an opportunity to do that. Next slide, please. So really the final part I just want to touch on here before we open this up to questions is building that company culture today. So I'm going to touch on a few things that Monroe have done as a business, and what we've seen and what we've seen from our clients as well. And some of these are going to help build culture, some of them are going to crush your culture. But first and foremost, you've got to define what your culture is. What is your statement and company goal? What is it that you're aiming to do as a business? What is that bigger picture that people are getting involved in here? What is it that you're looking to achieve? Whether you're the secretary or the CEO, there's a goal there, and you're part of achieving that. And having a team spirit whereby you work together is so, so important, especially with work from home, where people are feeling so disengaged. We're seeing levels of depression increase. Mental health awareness is something that's talked about more and more in Indonesia. And having very clear guides on how to work from home are really important. A lot of people probably thought it would be easy, but it's not easy to be disciplined. It's not easy to create company culture when no one is together anymore. So thinking about how you go through the process of bringing people together, well, a lot of the things we've talked about really do help to bring them together. These events, non-work based, morning meetings, making sure that people are at least showered out of bed and sitting in front of their computer at the right time. Sounds basic, but it's important, because there's this conundrum of, am I working from home or am I living at work? And it's a problem because people are engaged for too long. They don't get downtime. They don't get mental clarity, what we might call headspace. And that leads to depression. And overworking is one of the key elements of that. So, how much do we want to push people? How much do we want to track their every move? A lot of programmers and developers have keystrokes tracked. They know absolutely everything that's going on. You've all seen images of people creating machines to hit the spacebar so it looks like they're working. Is that positive for your business? How much should you trust people? This is something you need to be very clear on, and tracking the data, tracking efficiency on a monthly basis is often a better way to do it than trying to track it minute by minute. So depending on what the job is, depending on what the role is, you need to look at the best way to engage and track what your people are doing. The software is a great way to do that. Companies with more cash can obviously afford better software, but there's all types of options out there that you can use to engage with your employees and know what they're doing, because progress is hand in hand with happiness. And if you can't see how your team are progressing and they can't, then they're going to become depressed and feel like a hamster on a wheel. It's really, really important that through these reviews, team reviews, meetings, that you can see where you're going and where you're not only going as an individual, but as a team as well. And achieving these shorter term goals boosts motivation, boosts happiness. And once you reach those goals, it's time to celebrate. So that's really something that you can do as a business. And it starts with an individual. So the morning catch-ups, we do Friday wrap-ups as well, and we found them to be very useful because, again, there's some kind of psychological tricks in there where if you're getting to the Friday wrap-up with your teams and you know you're going to be speaking in front of people about what you've achieved that week, if you've had a great week, you want to boast about it, you want to talk about it, and you want to show off, and you're going to feel very proud of your achievements, and people are going to think, wow, I want to be able to have that. And conversely, if you are someone who hasn't had a great week and you have to speak up about what's happened, well, we all have down weeks, but you don't look forward to that. You'll remember that feeling and you won't want to repeat that the next week. So accountability is something that's really, really important. And you can break that down to teams. If you've got a small business, you can do it as a business. And it helps different areas of the business to be able to get together and know each other, know what's going on in other departments. And that can't be underrated. It's really, really important to build team spirit. So, monthly, quarterly recognitions, awards, these go without saying. I think Gen Z especially, millennials especially, they love recognition. They all do. And I think we all do in one way or another. But it's really, really important that you get that. And it can't just be the sales people for sales awards. It's got to be across the business. So looking at how do you recognize achievement? How do you recognize entrepreneurship? How do you recognize objective goals which are being reached, not just financial ones? Well, it's important that you're clear on that because, again, they're all part of gamification. They're all part of how you keep people engaged with your brand and how you keep them motivated and happy. And it's one step towards that promotion that they're looking for. And that keeps them sticky with your business. And when you're sticky with your employees and they want to be around with your business, they might not leave for more money because they know that they're going to get it with you in the future. And there's a lot to be said for staying with a business and working through and moving your way up before just looking to move out too quickly. And finally, we touched on this briefly before, non-work-based events. They're so fun. We use a lot of interns. We employ a lot of interns and we bring them in, we train them up, we put them through intern programs. We also get them to do our internal events and they've been absolutely fantastic. And 2 years ago when we started our internship programs, or 3 years ago now, they weren't that good. Now they're much better. And actually we end up hiring a lot of our interns, and some of our interns now are some of our top performers. So, keeping those people engaged, getting them to help to build our company culture, get involved in setting up events, it's been fantastic. So these things don't need to be expensive. You don't have to spend a lot of money on building company culture. And for us, it's been a big surprise. It was something that we just expected to be a small program that we would build, but it really took off, and it's really become something that has helped to shape our company culture through work from home, work from office, and bridge the gap between the two. So that's really all I wanted to cover, I think, overall in terms of building your company culture, your recognition. I think just one final point that I'll mention is just to wrap all of this up is that in a big LinkedIn review and a big Empresario review that we did recently, we looked at the key ways that employees want to be engaged with your business and the reasons that they will join and stay. So the first is excellent compensation and benefits. That's never changed. Money's never going away. We live in a capitalist world. That's still the number one choice. But good work-life balance, colleagues and culture, and open and effective management come in second, third, and fourth. And being open and honest with people, being very clear about when they need to be in the office, for how long, being able to trust people and give them more flexibility have really risen up from kind of not even being in the top 10 to being in the top 5. And that's really overall what we're seeing in the market at Monroe and within the Empresario group. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. We can open up now to some questions from you guys, and hopefully some of you would also like to share some of the things that you do as a business, and hopefully we can share some ideas with each other. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, James. Fantastic presentation. We need this, right? I mean, as a business, we're operating pandemic situation, right? We want to move from survival mode to grow mode, right? And at grow mode, one of the aspects of growth is growing your people, right? And it's such a great opportunity that we have James here, and all of us can benefit on this moment to ask James on how you find and retain your employees, because it's not easy these days. So thank you so much. Look, I have to apologize because it's almost 2:30, but I think, you know what, we still have time. I have some of, this is a Q&A sessions now. Let me explain first. So you have two options. All our participants, you have two options. If you want to speak directly to both James or Alvin, you can just put your name on the chat bar, and me or Fritz or Eman will help unmute yourself so you can talk directly to both of them. Or if you're comfortable putting your questions on the chat bar, and James and Alvin will just, actually there are some questions already answered to Alvin. Thank you so much for that part. But if you want to speak directly to them, please just put your name on the chat bar and we'll help you to unmute yourself, and then you can speak directly. But first, there are actually a couple of questions sent to us prior to this webinar sessions, and I think I want to bring that questions first, right? And then get the. I think this first one is for Alvin. There's this question: with the challenging situations at the moment, struggle in the company, financial limitations on hiring, how we should prioritize the importance of bureaucratic licensing procedures in Indonesia, despite of the struggles that we're currently seeing at the moment. So that's actually the questions that came up before the webinars started. So Alvin, would you like to comment on that one first, please? Sorry, let me.
Sorry, I'm muted again.
Oh, sorry.
Apologies. So sorry.
Sure.
So the question itself is really relating to some of the complexities being addressed through the omnibus. Is that right? Or what?
Yeah, I mean, well, the question was how we should prioritize the importance of bureaucratic licensing procedures, despite of the fact we've got challenging situations, struggle in the company, financial limitations on hiring, and all other things. How should we prioritize that, the importance of bureaucratic licensing procedures? That's basically the questions.
I see. Okay. Well, I think it depends on where the company stands, right? I mean,
right.
If it's an existing company running and doing well in Indonesia, and of course facing some headwinds, as everyone is, right? Then obviously that's probably not your top priority. Top priority is obviously to keep fulfilling your commitment to your clients and customers, right? Ensuring that your people are taken care of, right? And the overall company is doing well. But just be careful, also be mindful that some of the changes that have come up or have been put in place related to those different constituents, right? Whether it's your customers and your clients, right? Whether it's a tax changes or regulation changes that allow them or actually restrict them more, whichever, depending upon how the situations are. And the same with your people, right? Some of the changes in terms of, let's say, the income tax, that's impacting directly the workforce, right? The people that you work with and the people that you manage and so on. So I think it's about finding the balance, right? And about recognizing and realizing where the company operates and what situation it's in, and then kind of build up your priorities based on that. That's existing operation. If you are coming into the country, then obviously this is a lot of this changes that have come out or have been introduced through the omnibus and continue to be introduced to different things as of late. Through the tax departments are welcome changes. They're quite exciting, encouraging, adding complexity without a doubt, raising some questions in terms of grandfathering and do we need to change now, or is this prospective, retrospective, and so on and so forth, right? So a lot to digest without a doubt. But I think if you're coming into the market, this is an exciting, a very, very exciting and interesting time to come into Indonesia.
Okay, thank you so much. Very clear for that one. It's really depending on your priority rounds, right? So which one is it? All right, thank you. There's also questions to James prior to this event. One question. What is, James, what is the chance for expat to work in Indonesia these days? It seems like many companies always mention prefer local. I mean, do these people still have chance? I mean, I'm asking to the right person, I guess now, right? Can you please? Yeah. What do you think?
Perfect person.
Yeah, I mean, look, the honest answer was zero, and as the borders are now starting to reopen, we can now start to get people into the country. But you know, look, I work in this industry for the last 16 years, and I spent the last 3 months trying to hire an expat and try and figure out the loopholes and what to do and how to do it. And look, it's not easy, but you know, there are various different ways to do it. But from creating new businesses to them being under their own business and creating their own company and then outsourcing their services to you, to opening up new businesses licenses, and then you can hire them under the new business licenses. There's lots of, you know, those are the main ways that you can do it. Certainly if you're a recruitment business like mine, but you know, for a lot of other businesses, depending on what license you got, it can be a lot easier to hire. If you own a consulting business, for example, or a trade business, it's very easy to hire expats. It's just how do you get them into the country? How do you attract them to your business? Those are the next questions. But yeah, certainly at the moment, the best way to get them into the country is on a business visa. And once they're in the country under a business visa, which allows them to do meetings, then you can apply for their KITAS. It's that straightforward. So as long as you check the legalities around your license and the way that your company operates, much easier to now do that. It really depends from there, and then the options are pretty straightforward. So certainly if you've got a particular question around that, contact me directly and I can let you know.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, James. All right. I've actually got one more questions previously before we start the webinar to Alvin. The question is, what is the main investor's concern? Well, I think we're talking about a perspective. If you're an investor, of course, what is the main investor's concern when they see a target startup company? So they want to target a startup company for them to invest in. So what are the things that you're concerned about before you invest into a startup company in Indonesia? Please comment on that, Alvin.
Sure. Thanks, Grady. Presumably, these are intended, or presumably this is an investor outside of Indonesia trying to invest in a startup in Indonesia, right?
Right.
Because obviously for local investors, that they're more. I think it's the same thing. Whether it's startup, whether it's existing operation, it's going to be the same question in terms of understanding the business and how things operate in Indonesia, right? And then when it's a startup, then obviously after understanding the way things are and the way things that work in Indonesia, things that won't work in Indonesia, in terms of from a general perspective, then obviously it's understanding the business model of the different startups. There are so many startups in Indonesia right now. We ourselves at TMF Group, we work with different startups as our clients. Some of them have grown successfully, and some of the other ones maybe not so successfully, but still there, and some of the other ones didn't even get to the next level, right? So I think the way to do that is, again, just like looking at any startups, not any different than other part of the world, right? I mean, Indonesia, India is another one where there's just huge community and number of startups rising every year. And I think it's a question of just understanding the basic construct, or the basic what the startup what pain the startup is addressing in the market, right? So I think that's more universal than anything specific to Indonesia. So I think the specific thing to Indonesia is just understanding the local market and understanding what works then and what doesn't work in country. So.
All right, thank you so much, Alvin. So I think those are all the questions that come into us, and from the other questions that we have from the chat, I think has been answered by Alvin directly. So I think that's all for today, and we've got some comments coming from the chat from Uprima and Miss Elena Phillips, and to show appreciations to our webinar sessions for today. So to sum everything up, I just want to say that the fact that Indonesia are on the 6th ranked most complex jurisdictions in the world, yet, it's still a place for investor to come in. I mean, still, global investment destination, of course, after India, China, United States, but we have everything: natural resources, well-trained workers, growing domestic market. So, but in order to navigate in investment in Indonesia, we need guidance. And the things that mentioned by Alvin, that was fantastic. Not only that they can give you, information, but they can also support you at the operational level. So please feel free to contact Alvin to have further questions. As you can see on the slide, we have Alvin's LinkedIn and the company website. You can just easily find them on the web, on the net, and then you can connect with Alvin and then have further discussions. And also to James, I mean, building values, right? I mean, back in 1974, 80 to 83% of companies think that values are in the infrastructure, tangible, high-rise buildings, equipment, machinery. But nowadays, assets is intangible, ideas, right? People. So I think we need to realize is that to be financially successful, you need to be customer-centric, customer-focused. So if you want to do that, you need to start putting company culture first. And this is what being reminded by James. And, the way company measure mostly is, financial aspects or operations. But very least people look at culture. So I want to quote Maya Angelou, famous quote, say, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel." And having clear and supportive company culture is very important at this time. So thank you for Alvin, James, and sharing fantastic material, presentations, and a big thank you to all participants, your presence, contributions, and we're looking forward to see you again for our next webinar sessions in the future. So thank you so much for everybody. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Grady.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alvin. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
James.
you.
Thanks, Grady. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, please.